Hello and welcome to Nothing But the Science, the channel where we simplify and explain the latest peer-reviewed scientific articles, so you get all the science and none of the BS. So, without further ado, let's get straight to it. This week, we'll cover an article that was recently published in the British Medical Journal, titled The Effectiveness of Public Health Measures in Reducing the Incidence of COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 Transmission and COVID-19 Mortality, Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis, by Stella Talic and colleagues. Now, this paper is really interesting because this is one of the few studies that actually tells us how effective things like hand washing, wearing masks, and physical distancing are in preventing COVID-19. In a meta-analysis, researchers try to synthesize the existing published literature on a specific topic and try to tell us what the overall effect or the mean effect is for a particular relationship by looking at all of the published papers. In this study, the authors first screened 36,729 studies, of which finally only 72 met the inclusion criteria. Of these, 35 studies assessed individual interventions and 37 assessed multiple interventions. Based on the author's own assessment, the risk of bias was rated low in 3 studies, moderate in 24 studies, and high to serious in 7 studies. The breakup of studies that were covered in the final analysis included 11 studies from Asia, 9 from the United States, 7 from Europe, 3 from the Middle East, 3 from Africa, 1 from South America, and 1 from Australia. Given that it is extremely difficult to run randomized controlled trials in these kinds of studies, most of the available studies were observational, which included a mix of natural experiments, quasi-experiments, prospective cohort, retrospective cohort, case control, and cross-sectional studies. The main outcome measure in the paper was the incidence of COVID-19. In other words, how many cases of COVID-19 emerge in a given period of time. Other outcomes of interest included transmission and COVID-19 mortality rates. The main finding of the study is that simple things like hand washing, mask wearing, and physical distancing can reduce the risk of COVID-19 infection significantly. Among these, hand washing and mask wearing can both reduce the risk of infection by about 53%, a huge effect, whereas physical distancing can reduce the risk of infection by about 25%. However, one caveat here is that the studies on hand washing were very similar, but the hand washing effect was not statistically significant. That means that our level of confidence is slightly lower for this result. Whereas the studies on mask wearing and physical distancing were very different from each other, but the average results are statistically significant, which means that we have more confidence in the mean result. Overall, it is important to note that most of the studies included in this review likely suffered from confounding bias, which means that many factors were not considered in the individual studies, and so the overall effect may still be biased. However, the results of this review are very encouraging and tell us a simple thing, that if you follow basic public health guidelines, that we can actually prevent many cases of COVID-19 and help protect the community. So remember to mask up, wash your hands regularly, and maintain physical distancing. Until then, we'll see you in the next episode of Nothing But the Science.